Hi, my name is Phil Gardner and welcome to Fun with Boxes. Well, today I'm taking a look at a very special game. Now, why is that so special, Phil? You may well be thinking, and some of you may even be speaking out loud, asking, and indeed perhaps even pondering on why this is such a special game. Well, it's a special game because it's a game based on a Welsh seaside town. Yes, a game based in Wales, where I live. Fantastic. Not quite where I live, but in Wales, where I live. Not where I live in Wales. It's all very confusing, but that's geography for you. I was never good at it in school. But anyway, here is a map of Wales, and here is roughly where I am, and here is where the board game is set. And the name of the board game is Tenby. Ho, ho, ho. And what a mighty fine looking game this is. And it's a game for 2 to 5 players and will take around 30 minutes to an hour to play. And this is a game designed and illustrated by Benjie Talbott. And I can tell you, it's a bit of a cracker. Well, I was very lucky to get a copy of the prototype of this game because Tenby has been successfully crowdfunded and indeed I think is just being produced now, or the production is coming to an end, and it will not be much longer before it's available, and I cannot wait. And indeed, if you are someone out there who thinks, my goodness, this game looks very good, I wouldn't mind getting hold of a copy myself, that I do believe on GameFound, on their crowdfunding page, I believe you can still back the game. I had a little look myself and there was an option to back the game on there. So if you enjoy what you see today, then do go and have a look on GameFound to see if you are able to back it. Like I say, the game has been produced or is currently being produced, and it will not be long until it's out. It is a very early prototype of the game, so please do bear that in mind. Okay, so what's it all about? Croeso I Denbych y Pysgod. Welcome to Tenby. Well, the aim of Tenby is to create the best town you can using the available cards. And you will be building colourful streets and piers as you aim to create the best town you can. On your turn, you will be adding terraces, piers and Tenby town's landmarks into your streets. And if you can persuade hard-working local residents to help, you just might pick up some extra points. And whoever has the most points at the end of the game will of course win. Well, before we take a look at how you set up and play the game, let's take a Fun with Boxes look at what you get in a game of Tenby. Well, please do remember this is a prototype version of the game, and I can tell you I've seen some pictures of what the final version of the game will look like, and I am super excited indeed. Well, let's take a look at how you set up the game, and then we'll take a look at how to play the game. Okay, before we take a look at the setup, let's first separate all the game components and take a quick look at those. First off, we have terrace cards, and these all have this back to them. And these are all the terraced houses in the game. Next we have the pier cards with this back. And these are all the pier cards in the game. Then we have some landmark cards, some resident cards, and 5 start cards. We have a set of 16 day cards, all numbered, and a set of 5 night cards, again numbered. Then we have some plain end of terrace cards and some plain end of pier cards again as well. And then we have the solo cards here. This is the solo reference card. And then we have 16 compass cards and 12 anchor cards. And they are all used in the solo play mode. Then finally we have a round tracker card, little cube on, and we have the 5 player aid cards as well. And finally we have some player counters and 20 life ring tokens along with the round tracker cube there. And that's all the components for the game. Okay, I'm going to set the game up for 2 players, and the first thing you'll need to do is to take the 3 main decks of cards, the terrace cards, the pier cards and the landmark cards. Give them all a good shuffle separately and then lay them out in a position like this on the table. And then what we are going to do is set up the market, and we're going to draw cards from the top of each deck and place them in rows to the right of the deck, and the number of cards drawn is equal to the number of players plus 1 for the terrace cards. So I would draw for a 2-player game 1, 2, 3. And for the pier cards, it's the number of players, so I would draw 2. And for the landmark cards, it's the number of players minus 1. And this forms your market. Keep some room to the left of these cards for a discard pile. Then, somewhere convenient, place the end of terrace cards and end of pier cards. Shuffle the resident cards first and place them in a face down stack. And now we're going to set up the day cards, night cards and the round card. And each round we'll be using the night cards to set player turn order and the day cards to select the actions you will have access to. So place your round tracker onto the table and place the cube onto the starting 1 space. Then you select a number of night cards equal to the number of players in the game. So with 2 players, we would use 1 to 2. And then you would take the day cards and give these a good shuffle and place them face down. And then you would draw cards equal to the number of players plus 1. And then make sure you put the day cards in ascending order. And we'd have a discard pile here. So this is our market area. This is where we track our rounds and our actions for the game, and this is where we will have the player order as well. And here are the resident cards, and these are the end of pier and end of terrace cards. So that's the basic layout of the game setup. Now all we have to do is set up the players, and this is very straightforward. Each player will choose one of the player colour starting cards. For instance, we would choose a red and a yellow card for this 2-player game, and you would simply place those face up in front of you. And this is your starting terrace card. Each player will take the coloured reference card of their colour, and then each player would draw a resident card from the top of the deck and keep those hidden from the other players. And then finally, whoever most recently went for a walk on a beach will be the first player, and they would pop their token onto the number 1 night card, and then the next person in clockwise order would place their counters on. And this is set up for a 2-player game. Obviously for a 3 or 4-player game you would continue doing that. So that's the game set up, and yellow is going to be the first player of the game. Tenby is played over exactly 10 rounds, and each round is split into 3 phases. You have the night phase where you draft actions, the day phase where you resolve those actions, and then the cleanup phase where you clear and replenish the market. Okay, the first round of the game is the night phase, where we would look at the player order on the night cards, and in that player order, players will select one of the day cards. And to do this, simply yellow is the first player. They may decide to choose to take this card, and then red chooses this card. And it's as simple as that. And then we move on to the day phase, in which all players will take turns to take their actions. So starting with the player who's on the lowest number day card, each player will resolve all the actions on that card before play passes then to the next player. So in this example, no one has placed anything on number 5, but on number 10, red will now go first, and they will get to perform all the actions on the card. And players can take these actions in any order they wish. They could take this pier action, for example, then take a life token, and then take 2 terrace cards, one at a time. And then that player places their token back onto the night cards at the lowest left-hand space. So red would return this to space number 1, and they will be first to choose the daytime cards in the next round. And then simply yellow would go next, and then they would move their counter onto the next available space on the night track. Let's take a closer look at the actions. So they are very, very straightforward. So this action here allows you to take a terrace card from the market, and you can choose any of the face-up cards or take blind from the top. You also have the opportunity, instead of taking these, you can take one of these end of terrace cards, which are double-sided. And the same thing will go for the pier cards. Again, for each of these icons displayed, you may take a pier card that's face up or one blind from the top of the deck, or instead you can take an end of pier card, again a double-sided end of pier card. This icon will then mean you can take a face up landmark card from the market, or again blind from the top, or instead you can choose to take a terrace card or a pier card action instead of taking a landmark card. If there's a life ring token or life ring token icon on the card, then you would simply take as many of those tokens as indicated. And then finally, if this icon is displayed, then you would take a resident card. And to do this, you would take the top 2 cards from the resident deck and choose one to keep in your hand and discard the other to the bottom of the deck. So for example, I have these 2 cards here, so I could choose to take the Harbour Master card, keep that secret, put that into my hand, and return this one without showing it to the bottom of the deck. And that's all the actions you can take in the game, all very straightforward. And that's the end of the day phase. Now there will be one day card which hasn't been used, so don't worry about that, we'll cover that in a moment. And once the last player has completed their turn, the round ends and the cleanup phase begins. And the first thing we would do is to place a life ring token on the unclaimed day card and leave it there for the next round. Then the cards into the discard pile. We would replenish the day cards by drawing cards until there are a number of cards equal to the number of players in the game plus 1. So we would draw 2 more cards to complete this, and then rearrange them in numerical order once again. And then we would remove all of the town cards that are remaining in the market and discard them. And these are all collectively known as town cards, and then you would replenish the market just like we did during setup. And then we would move the round tracker on to the next round. Now, like I say, the game's played over 10 rounds, but after the end of the 9th round, before you start At the 10th round, there's a final round reward. And at the end of the 9th round, you would clear all the unused cards as normal. However, you don't replenish the market just yet. All players are going to receive a little bonus for their stay in Tenby. And in player order, using the night time cards, each player may take any combination of 3 cards blind from the top of either the terraced or pier cards. And each player must choose one of these cards to immediately play in their town and then discard the other 2 cards not drawn. And then once each player has selected and played a card, you finish the cleanup phase by replenishing the market and the day cards ready for the 10th and final round. Let's take a look at a town card. At the top of the card, from left to right, you have the area type, base type, the subtype, and the landmark status to the right. And all the icons are covered in the rulebook. So on this terrace card, the leftmost icon there, that shows you it's the town icon. The little house symbol then shows that it's a terrace, and then the heart there shows that it's a home. Now there could be a pound sign which indicates a business card, or there could be the water symbol that shows that it's a pier, or a landmark icon, or indeed this black starting card symbol as well. Now, whenever you take an action and pick up a card, you have to immediately play that card into your display. The only cards that you keep in hand are the resident cards. So if on my turn as an action I decided to pick this terrace card, I would need to place it either to the left or right of my starting card, or I could start a new street. So for example, what I could do is I could pop this to the right hand side of my starting card, and now I'm starting a nice street here. And you have to make sure that the edges match. Again, simply if I took this card on my turn, a landmark card, I could place it either to the left or the right of my existing street, matching the edges. I cannot put it in between. Once you've placed the card, you cannot move it. So I could either place it here, or indeed I could start a new street with it. Now there is one rule with the landmark cards, and that is you can only have one landmark card in each of your streets. So here with the pier cards, I could not place a pier card here or here because the edges do not match. So if I had this setup, then what I could do is I could take this pier card and place it here on my turn. I can't place it here, here or here, but I could start a new street. And if I took this card, then I could place it only here and end that street, or indeed start a new street. So why are we building all these lovely looking streets? Well, we're trying to score the most points by creating the most wonderful streets in Tenby. So how do we go about scoring? Well, if you notice at the bottom of the card, it will show you how that card scores, if it scores at all. Now, your starting cards do not score anything. That's why they have a 0 there at the bottom. But then every other card you get in the game will have some form of scoring condition on it. And the scoring conditions are dependent on what is next to that card. For instance, the scoring feature of this condition is a cloud, and for each individual cloud within the scoring range, it will be worth 1 point at the end of the game. And some cards, such as the End of Terrace and End of Pier cards, do not have a scoring feature on them, only a number, and these are simply worth that amount of points at the end of the game. Now, the scoring conditions will have a range, and a single white arrow will only score for the card immediately adjacent in that direction, and never score for features that are on that card. So, for example, this icon with the pigeon will score 1 point for every pigeon on each of the cards that are directly adjacent to that card. Now there are double grey arrows, and they will score for cards up to 2 cards adjacent to that card. And finally, there's a gold arrow, and that will score for the entire street, including the card with the scoring condition on it. So with that in mind, let's take a look at a scoring example. And for simplicity's sake, I will use the one direct from the rulebook. So first, we'll start off with the left-hand card there. That's the pier card. And this is the one that has the seagulls on there. So seagulls will score 1 point for each of up to 2 cards distant. And there are 3 seagulls on the landmark card directly to the right and none on the pier card beyond that, making a total of 3 seagulls for 3 points. Next, seagulls score 1 point for each on the entire street, including this card. There are 3 seagulls on this landmark card and 2 on the terrace card to the right, making a total of 5 seagulls, which will give you 5 points. Now, benches score 3 points each on the 2 cards immediately adjacent to this one. And there are 2 benches on the landmark card to the left and 1 on a terrace card to the right, making a total of 3 benches for 9 points. And next we have clouds scoring 1 point for each up to 2 cards distant. And there are 2 clouds on the landmark card and 3 clouds on the pier card to the left, and 2 on the terrace card to the right, making a total of 7 clouds, which gives you 7 points. Finally, red terraces will score 3 points each on the 2 cards immediately adjacent to this one. There is 1 red terrace card to the left, so this will give you a total of 3 points. And then the grand total for the street is 27 points. So that should give you a good idea of how the scoring works and why you will want to place cards in a certain order in your street. Now, at any point during your turn, and even multiple times during your turn, you may also spend life ring tokens to take any number of life ring actions. For example, you can use them to pay for day card actions. So to gain a terrace card action and gain a pier card action, both would cost you 3 life ring tokens. And you pay the cost of the supply and then resolve the chosen action as normal. If you want to gain a landmark tile or gain a resident card action, both of those will cost 4 life ring tokens, and again pay the cost of the supply, then resolve the chosen action as normal. Another action is to reveal a card, and this costs 1 life ring token, and you would draw any 1 card from the top of any town market deck and place it face up in the market in its respective row. Now, I said you cannot move any of your cards once you've placed them onto the table. However, you can use 2 life ring tokens to move a card, and you would choose any 1 card in your town and move it to any other position in your town, sliding cards to make space if required. You can also move a card from within the middle of a street to any other position in any position in your town. So you can move a card in between 2 other cards to any position. So you can move it from one street to another street. But whenever you move a card, you must make sure that it does match the edge rules as normal. And you cannot move a card if it means breaking the normal edge matching rules. One important thing to note here is life ring tokens are not worth any points at the end of the game. Completing a street. A street in Tenby is a consecutive horizontal connected set of cards, and a street is considered completed when it has a pier end card at both ends of the street. All pier end cards have a white tick in a purple box there to remind you. But there's no obligation to complete any of your streets. However, you may wish to do so to access higher scores on resident cards. And now we will talk about resident cards. During the game, you will possibly be collecting resident cards. And at the end of the game, after the final player has finished their turn, all players will reveal all of their resident cards and assess them for points. And there are 2 main types of resident card. Cards that score for a single street only, with different tiers of scores, and cards that have only 1 tier of scores, but may score for multiple streets. Additionally, almost all resident card scores will score more or less points, depending on if the street has been completed or not. So, in the example in the rulebook, we take a look at the 2 versions of Carpenter. So this one can only be applied to a single street within your town. And you will score depending on the number of features of that type. So this is looking for shutters. If you've got 6 or more shutters in a single street, then you are going to score some points. And this will depend on whether the street is completed or not. If it's completed and you've got 6 shutters in that street, then you will score 3 points. But if you didn't complete that street, you would score 2 points instead. And of course you can see there, if you managed to get 10 shutters in that street and completed it, you would get 10 points. And the other version of the carpenter is having 5 shutters in the same street. In this case, for each street that has at least 5 shutters in it, you will be able to access those scores. So for each street that is incomplete but has at least 5 shutters, you will score 2 points. And for each complete street that has at least 5 shutters, you will score 3 points. So there we go, at the end of the 10th round of the game, that's when all players will reveal their resident cards, and then all players will score their streets and then score their resident cards. And don't forget, any leftover life ring tokens are worth no points. And the player with the most points will win, and in the case of a tie, the player with the most completed streets will win. If there's still a tie, then the player who most recently visited Tenby wins. And if there's still a tie, then those players share in their excellent representation of the beautiful town of Tenby. And for scoring, there are many features that you can score. For example, there's benches, bins, there's binoculars, chimneys, clouds, flower boxes, lampposts, lobster boxes, porches, seagulls, shutters. There's a lot of different features that you can score within the game. So there you go, that's an overview of the rules for this wonderful game called Tenby. Well, let's deal with that elephant in the room, shall we first? Or shall we deal with that seagull in the room, perhaps? Obviously, I could be a little biased about the game's theme. Tenby, set in Wales, a town that I used to go and visit with my family when I was younger, and indeed a town that my father painted in his younger days, and we used to have his painting on the wall in the house there. So Tenby is definitely a place that is very firmly in my heart. But we are here to talk about games and about board games and about Tenby, the board game from Cosy Cub Games here, Benjie Talbott. This is a brilliant, fun game. Ah, wow, it is so much fun. And you don't have to have been to Tenby to appreciate it. Though if you have been and visited Tenby, then you will find the artwork will take you right back there. It really is wonderfully illustrated. It's a brilliant, clever game where you're building up your most powerful combination of things to be able to score at the end of the game, and it is a rather satisfying experience too. It is clever, very easy to play, and of course a great deal of fun. As I said earlier on, I cannot wait to get my hands on the final version of this game that I backed as soon as I saw the crowdfunding page go live. It certainly looked interesting, and I'm so grateful and thrilled that Benjie sent me a copy of the prototype for me to be able to play and take a look at and to show you as well. I'm so glad Benjie did, because we have really enjoyed playing this. So there you go, Tenby, soon to be fulfilled. Don't forget, if you like the look of it, jump onto GameFound now and see if you can get that pledge in before it is fulfilled and delivered. Well, I was so excited about the game, I forgot to give it my Fun with Boxes recommendation. Well, it'd be no surprise that I'm going to give this game 2 big Fun with Boxes thumbs up. What a cracking game. One to definitely check out. Well, I do hope you enjoyed taking a look at that with me. If you did, please consider hitting the old like button, and also please hit that subscribe, people. You would be wonderful people if you did, because it would really help me to grow the channel. And in the meantime, as always, thanks for watching. Please do take care, and bye for now.